I'm going to try to put all these updates now, which are building up, and put them into a playlist and have that available on the channel. The side effects for the previous week. We know going in, now we put Reflumed back into the program, 2 weeks on, 1 week off. I felt that the side effects were worse than at the same time in cycle 4. I had a lot more general body aches and pains and headache that I remember having, to the point of needing a couple of lighter analgesics, Tylenol, to cut through that a little bit, starting on Tuesday and for a couple days during the week, which I didn't have to take anything at the same period in cycle 4, even in cycle 3. So that was, I wondered about that, why that was the case. Sometimes I don't know. Did I have an underlying infection? Because people were over here for Christmas. I also went on that trip to Chicago. Did I catch something? Who knows? I don't know. So that's just, I'm just reporting that's what I felt. General fatigue and tiredness, yes, that was there, and that still is the big one. Hangs on. The nasal nosebleeds, that stays there, and those are almost not worth mentioning because they're always there. Consistent side effects that I get. We'll get to the blood work from Thursday. In general, the team is happy with it. It's very consistent. I mentioned that one of the values for the kidneys was trending away from the norm. Well, it came back to down, going the other way. So again, normal statistical variation seems to be going on in terms of the organs and the kidneys, but they're functioning well. Therefore I'm happy with it. No real issues. Magnesium came down. That was addressed during dosing. I'll mention that when I get to talking about the dosing on Friday. The one value, again, I'll mention that Reflumed came back on the picture. Its side effect is anemia. You watched that through the blood work. It certainly showed up, because values for the hemoglobin last week were 7.5. This week they dropped down to 7.0. I had a discussion with the RN and the oncologist on Thursday, and he felt that when you do a transfusion, you introduce new antibodies, and so you don't want to transfuse until you have absolutely necessary. He thought 7.0 was still good, and we'd probably wait till the following week to do that transfusion. So again, gave the green light for the dosing for Friday. So I'll move to Friday, because they'd have an event happen on Friday that could have thrown everything off. I mean, I was nervous. Ended up not being the case, but on Friday morning, waiting to make my drive to the hospital, and all of a sudden I felt this chill come over me, and put on my sweatshirt. Next thing I knew, I was underneath a blanket. My teeth were chattering, a classic fever type reaction. And I didn't make the connection at the time. Very similar to when I talked about the 6 months leading up to this. Before I even knew I had myeloma, I was getting these very similar fever chill reactions. Most likely reactions, I thought, just to infection, but my guess is now probably body reactions to myeloma itself, because you realize that myeloma is actually a chronic infection, and your body doesn't want it, or it doesn't know what to do with it, though. And that's a reaction, I assume, reaction to it. And it was very similar to that, so I'm kind of watching the clock. I have to make my drive to the hospital, waiting for the fever to kind of pass. And so I waited, and I was a little concerned. I took a digital thermometer of the temperature, and it was 100.0, so I'm starting to get nervous. Is this going to affect all the dosing? And that's what I don't want to do. Let's go to the hospital. It's time. But by the time I was in the car in 15 minutes, I could just sense from my body everything felt better. I felt my temperature was back to normal. I didn't have the chills. Turned the heat down in the car. And by the time I got to the hospital, I felt okay. But again, I had this reaction. Oh my God, my temperature's up. Do I have an infection? And I mentioned to them. They called me back into the infusion center for my turn with the dosing. I mentioned that my nurse for the day was right there to take my vitals. So I said, hey, I told the RN, I took my temperature early. It was 100. I felt these chills come on, and right away she says, well, we'll find out right now. And she pulled out the magic wand, and swiped me twice on the temperature. And both values, my temperature was normal, 98.7. So they just all walked away, and numbers don't lie. But you kind of think, I'm not going to clear an infection in a couple hours, so probably wasn't an infection. Maybe it was just the battle going on, and then the body was reacting to something, the cancer. I'm assuming that's what was happening. I don't know. As far as the dosing goes, which is all I cared about, that, again, was no problem. We go right ahead. Because of the low magnesium, they decided to give me an IV infusion of 2 mg per 50 mils of magnesium, and then just switch over to the Zometa. Let me just mention that. I mentioned it before, but I get a Zometa infusion, which is Zeledronic Acid, which many older patients get for osteoporosis and to protect the bones and build the bones back up. Well, they found it has very good effects especially for cancer patients with multiple myeloma, where your bone is, ravaged by the cancer, and helps prevent more loss of bone into the bloodstream with the calcium. Again, it's to build up the bones again, but typical dose for osteoporosis patients is every 6 months. I'm getting this every month based on the condition and where I was, and that my skeletal system was definitely compromised from the myeloma. Magnesium infusion, and then just switched the bag out and gave me the 15 minutes of the Zometa dose. And as usual, I got the VELCADE injection sub-Q into the abdomen region. That's where we're at, and I'll see you next week. Please comment, leave anything below for me to talk about. I'll answer the questions without a problem. So I'll see you next week. Happy New Year 2019. Here we come.